Okay,
Well,
fine. Let's not waste time. Anybody have a good question?
I do. No one else does.
Great.
So we know. We know that in the case of like when the whole I guess the trolley situation where like you have to choose between going down like which life to kill you can't choose. What about
Yeah.
in the case of in the case of for example either Mossad agent that if he gets captured then he could reveal information that will put everyone else in jeopardy. Alternatively, on the space shuttle Columbia, so one of the theories is that they hit the self destruct switch because if they had actually came into the atmosphere and not broken apart, then they would have actually killed a lot more people. So in those situations, what does Chazal say about like do we?
So it's a sugi, and it's more of a hi Yaakov and Aviel. It's
Hey.
more of a it's more of a shear that needs beginning, middle, and end than something that I could do adequately as a random question. The logical mission to go back to is the machlokus of the people who are holding one flask of water, where there's only enough for one of them, and Rabbi Akiva Paskins, and it seems the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva that we go chayecha kodem, your life comes first. In general, but not always, there's a sheval tasa adif in these things. We don't play omniscient narrator. We let a Kadosh Baruch Hu decide, as it were, based on whatever the circumstances are. Because that's like the general rule of thumb, and then it gets complicated. And all this, you piled on all the different scenarios, and really to do that adequately, you'd need a better shear than this.
Well, it was asking for a good random question, so I think that fits the bill.
No, it's a great question. It's fascinating too. I mean, has anybody heard the shear? It's the famous trolley shear. It's like one of these inevitable topics that they talk about in ethics courses in university, and of course, and al pi halacha, we have ways of dealing. We have ways of dealing with all these issues as well. I just gave you some of the major principles.
How was the wedding last night, Rabbi?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, really wonderful, really quite wonderful. Avram McGrefta is, a lot of you know him, came down the first day. I was sitting the base medrash on the day that everybody was supposed to arrive. He got there a little earlier than everybody else, came in, we sat and learned together. He looked at me and he said, I'd like to be a tzaddik. So I don't think any of us are qualified, and that's very relevant to Iyov to be able to say, he's a tzaddik, he's a Rasha, he's a Benoni. We don't know. Nobody knows really. I mean, I don't know if we've discussed that obvious variable is who are we to determine. I think we did actually once. Who are we to determine what makes it tzaddik? I mean, we know what goes on. We know that what goes on behind closed doors or in one's subconscious is often surprising, shocking. What goes on? People have skeletons in their closets. So I don't know, but still, in all, Avram's a tzaddik. So you see this beaming Hassan marrying. I don't know if this means anything to you. If I said the name Snifa Yashan, does that mean anything to anybody? Yeah. So in the various fromest of the seminaries of the Beis Yaakov system in Eretz Yisrael, we just basically hit through the ceiling. Like it's the starkest of stark girls, totally Israeli, nice young Persian woman. So that's his kala, and he married this great family, and the chassid was right in the same location as the Brickmans was last week, where you're looking punked right into Bleiweiss. I walked there with I had set up Avram with a couple of my students, with Eden Sargatfar and Yossi Tobi and a couple of the Great Neck clan went to learn with him, and so they went to the wedding too. And I walked there with Yossi Tobi and I figured I'll play tour guide, why not? So I took him to the rooftop. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, right in the center of the old city. There's this fantastic place you go, big spread out area of rooftops. You're looking into Bleiweiss, and I gave him a spiel that I imagine all of you have heard me give before. Oh, no, not all of you, but a bunch of you have. And a lot more. I have, obviously, every year I'm growing, I'm learning new things. So I gave him a bunch of material, and we went down. And of course, that puts me in the mindset of, this providential time that we're living in. Coronavirus has a tendency to make us kind of reflect on the important things. And then you see, a wonderful young man, wonderful young woman making a life together right there, Od Yisham Bara Yehuda V'chutzos Yerushalayim. So I was like, it was the kind of crying that you reach up and you feel the tears. Oh, yeah, right, I'm crying a lot. But that I couldn't because I had one of these really obnoxious masks, the spaceman mask. So, I've only a few times put my fork up to it, forgetting that I have it on. Yeah. Anybody else have mask aversion syndrome? Are you in America wearing them? I don't get the impression that anybody in America takes any of this very seriously, despite your disastrous statistics. What, Toby?
Florida is very calm.
Yeah.
No.
To a fault, one would understand, right?
At least where I live. Nobody.
I don't know where Dovey lives, but at least for me, I was thrown out of two kosher groceries and a secular grocery because I wasn't wearing a mask. It's now legally mandated in my county that you cannot walk into any establishment, any public establishment, without wearing a mask.
As well it should be, and I hope when you say that they threw you out, that it was actually physical and complete,
People are so dramatic. A person turned around to me in line and said, "Excuse me, sir, please take 3 steps." I was like, I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know, everyone's now like looking at each other very.
Right, and then that whole self-righteous thing starts happening with the mask. Oh, you don't wear yours? Or you only know how to wear yours over your chin where it's totally ineffective? Right? And people start,
The people who are not taking it seriously are very loud.
And it's good to see a bunch of you who just came on, Ezra Dubov and Ben Richmond. And good. Maybe if anybody has something burning, one last short random question.
If you want something burning, I can help with that.
No, not you, Ari. Anybody?
We didn't call for arsonists.
Definitely not.
Rabbi always remembers me and his share.
Right? Yeah, no, that was scary. The black marks are just starting to come off the ceiling, Ari. Okay, well, let's get down to business. We're learning Sefer Iyov. If you have your copy, take it out. And we're now holding by the middle section, which I've said before, I strongly recommend that you just go through and read the whole thing. Best with commentaries, but if you lack patience or time, just do the whole thing. And you'll get a feeling of the scope, even though you'll probably be scratching your head yeshiva style. You'll probably be a little bit mystified at some of the statements. They tend to speak in riddles, and often, and our scroll's wonderful in most areas. The one thing I wish I was on the editorial committee was I would take all the thesaurus in the art scroll editorial office and burn it, because they use words that are unnecessarily big and abstruse, and they further confound the reader. But if you can get past all of that, all of the above, it's really worth just going through and getting a feeling of what goes on. But since a lot of you are not going to do that, and anyway, our business here is to try to go through the major ideas of Iyov, then I'm going to continue to summarize. Again, Eitan, welcome. Eitan and Tal, if you have a chance to go through and see everything this is one of those classes that really does help a lot to know what's gone on before. Iyov is somebody who's been tested in the extreme, and he's now really gone to the lowest depths. There's probably much lower than what Iyov has gone, but he's lost what seems to be everything. And he and his friends are going around discussing what is suffering? What are the implications of all this? And we've met Iyov, certainly he's the biggest talker in the book. We met his friends Eliphaz and Bildad, and we've also suggested some of the major philosophical ideas that each of them embodies. Tonight we're going to discuss so far, and I hope we'll get into the fourth and last figure that we're going to see, a human figure at least, that we're going to see, and his name is Eliyahu, and he's different than everybody. But so far is the third of the friends. Remember, these are when we say friends, we gave an introduction. We did really a whole session on friendship, on what friends mean. You remember the Gemara in Baba Basra says these four were in many ways the prototype of friendship. They're the ones that inspired the famous Chazal statement, "O chavrusa o misusa," give me friendship or give me death. They had such they were so keenly in touch with each other. The way the Gemara Baba Basra has it, they all owned the same. They all had the same, a different tree, like a friendship ring or a crown in another version of the story. That when one of them was in trouble, all of them knew about it, and immediately they came rushing to the aid. To come and do whatever they could. So it's kind of surprising that we find them not acting altogether that friendly towards one another. So far, his approach, and based on the Rambam and the Moreh Nevuchim, I'm just reminding us, the Rambam understood that his ideas were very similar to something that the Rambam had in his generation, a Muslim outlook on life. It's called the Ashariya, that essentially understands Hashem has all the power in the world, and that everything that he does, we just take it as a given, it's all justified, and we may and probably won't ever understand it, period. That's Sofar's perspective. And here in chapter 11, when Sofar finally speaks, they're very organized too. Right? If you notice this, it's not like us where we interrupt each other, our conversations overlap. I mean, each one is given his due, and when he's quiet, then Iyov goes at it. And now it's Sofar's turn, and maybe it almost makes sense that he's the last to pipe up of the three friends initially that visit, because his message is very terse, very straightforward. His emphasis is that Iyov, you're suffering, you must have sinned. And you know what, Iyov? You're denying it. That means you probably sinned and don't realize it. He has nothing to say about Iyov's suffering. He goes into he goes into the issue about what it means that Hashem allows the wicked a certain tranquility and sometimes even prosperity in this world. He's, by doing this, Sofar emphasizes this aspect, that he's giving the Rishayim, the wicked, a chance to make tshuva, and that's why if you're living it up, so you might want to realize that that's discordant. Something's weird about that. Wait, everything's going well. How could that be? And then take a cue. Of course, there's an implication there. Iyov, you did very well, right? Maybe that was because maybe like the Rishayim are supposed to realize if things are going well and they don't deserve it, maybe that's Hashem cutting them some slack, giving them some leeway so that everything should, they should be inspired to try to reconsider what are they doing in this world. Shammai, welcome. I'm tempted to digress a little bit, but I am trying to make this discussion contemporary, and something just floods back to me in my memory banks. And I'm a movie buff, so I can't resist. I also did my senior thesis in Berkeley on Woody Allen. So one of the last movies of his that I've seen, I understand that since then I'm not missing anything anyway. But one of the last movies that I saw of his that I remember being at least interesting, and to everything we just said, Sofar's point of view, totally relevant, was a movie, I guess it must have been, I think it's early 90s. And I maybe one of the last movies I ever saw was a movie called Crimes and Misdemeanors. Does that mean anything to anybody? Here's the basic outline, and this is why it's relevant, because I think Woody Allen's hardly a deep philosopher, but he does tackle themes. He does at least attempt to introduce them. He sets up two parallel stories, where he's one of the protagonists the Schlemazel, who nothing goes his way, even though in theory he's the Iyov figure in this case, where everything goes badly for him, even though he didn't do anything to deserve it. Parallel, and they somehow are related by there's some kind of connection that makes the stories overlap. Parallel, he tells a story of a wildly successful, also Jewish doctor. Martin Landau's the actor who plays him. He's a doctor who everything goes his way, wealthy, prestigious, beautiful family, and philanderer. Philanderer is maybe a term. Is that used anymore? It just means he cheats on his wife, and he's got a side fling that. Hi, Yoel, Fabian, welcome. He has a side fling. What a
Been
time
here
to
for
come
a
in.
hot minute, Rabbi.
But I'm setting this up as a way of just trying to make the point and bring it home in a contemporary sense. The doctor is a philanderer. He's got a side fling who becomes a basket case, and she starts threatening suicide unless he leaves his wife, and then starts leaving phone messages and threatens to sort of disrupt the order of his very calculated, perfected existence. And so he has her assassinated, the wealthy doctor. And then in the course of the movie, he's racked with guilt and starts to, what have I done and how could this be? And all these questions that we're discussing are now coming up in his mind, as they are in the parallel story with Woody Allen. The end of the movie, and this is so depressing, the end of the movie is that Woody Allen, the good guy, the Iyov stand-in, I guess, he basically loses everything. And he walks away an empty, broken man. And the doctor, as a bunch of twists of fate would have it, completely walks away more successful than he ever was. They arrest an innocent man. Everything's great. There's no rhyme or reason. The universe is pointless. Live it up. Have a great time. Be amoral. And if your mistress makes trouble, have an assassin do a hit job on her. Yeah, that was the movie, and that's one way of dealing with these questions. Does that, that point of view, that sort of arbitrary feeling of justice in the world, which is so prevalent today, and it's also a very tempting worldview, because if indeed that's true, we're all free to just indulge ourselves. If I'm not mistaken, shortly after that movie came out, and those themes what we discussed, Woody Allen himself got himself into some trouble, indulging himself, because there's no rhyme or reason. You might as well have a good time in this world, right? So that's the way of the modern world. Okay, so far comes to emphasize an idea, and insofar as ideas, like the other friends too, there is definitely a kernel of truth. We believe. He believes clearly. There's a Hashem is in the world. There's Hashgacha Pratis. He's perfect. Like with the other friends, he's faulted for his insensitivity, not for the content of his ideas. Iyov has a reaction. Does Iyov ever have a reaction? He always has a reaction. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's at least consider some things that Iyov so far says. Open up, if you can, to chapter 11, verse 6. You know what? Again, I'm going to read a little bit in advance, because the opening psukim of this chapter really give you a sense of who so far is and where he's going with his ideas. I'm talking an awful lot tonight. I hope I'm not kind of shouting over you or making you feel like you don't want to contribute. By all means, feel free to contribute if you have. Or alternately, just tune me out and do the laundry. That's how I feel like that's my students in Shiur anyway, a lot of the time. So there goes. Okay, chapter 11. And again, questions, thoughts, insights, always welcome.
Wait,
so
Rob, prior
to
to starting that, can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah, great, Ed. Go ahead.
So I definitely agree that, like, with like previous concept you said, that most people in the world, it's like, I guess they don't really think justice exists or something of that nature. But I also think there's a very strong
most people fit that Woody Allen worldview.
Yeah, like those people. Most people, I would say.
I would think most youth. Yeah.
But what?
Again, it's a very depressing it's a very depressing worldview, but it's simultaneously a very convenient one, because then it gives you complete freedom to do whatever you feel like doing and really not worry about any moral implications. So what did you want to say about it, Ed?
Yeah, so I would maybe disagree a bit, but I want to hear your thoughts because like quote unquote karma, I feel like is a big thing in today's secular society as well. So I think that's interesting. Like, how do you think that lines up?
But what are you bringing in about karma?
As in, like, they do think there's a sense of justice in some way.
They do, but it's very abstract. It's nowhere nearly as specific as our view and as really legitimately expressed by Tzofar here. There's a creator of the universe. He is absolutely just. We don't get it. If I'm not mistaken, you'll correct me here. I hope you don't feel my karma that it's offensive to you. But karma is more vague and undefined. I mean, maybe there's a creator, but not necessarily.
Got you. Okay, cool.
Which, I mean, that's everything, right? I mean, Hashem is front and center, beginning, middle, and end. That makes all the difference in the world. Because if it's just karma you could fit in your back pocket. You could take it out when it serves your agenda, and then you could put it away when it somehow stands in your way of your libido, or of your quest to make a lot of money immorally.
Cool. Okay.
Karma is part of the modern celebration of the self. As long as it doesn't interfere with me and my agenda, then I'm good. Tzofar says like this. Open up chapter 11, the very beginning. I'm headed towards the 6th verse, but let's see how he leads in. Tzofar the Namatite responded and said, should one of abundant words not be answered? Should the eloquent man be in the right? He's not saying Iyov's name, that's for sure, but he's maybe referring to him as an eloquent man. But you're eloquent, Iyov, you have what to say, but really you think you're in the right? Implying, of course, you're anything but. You're probably in the wrong, Iyov. I mean, you're suffering. No. Continues, your fabrications, your lies, strike men dumb. You ridicule, and no one confounds you. So that you say, my doctrine is impeccable. Oh, that's a very art scrolly phrasing. How about my philosophy or my theology is flawless, is perfect. For I have been pure in my eyes. That's how Tzofar hears Iyov saying, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm an innocent man. Screaming that. Why me? Why me? Why me? Gavi, welcome. We're in the fifth pasuk. However, now Tzofar leads in for his punchline. Would that God would speak, open his lips to you. Pasuk 6. That he would inform you of the hidden recesses of wisdom, that sagacity has double folds. Know then that God, Hashem, grants you accommodation from some of your sins. So what's he saying here?
That it's like a one-sided thing so far, with that we're only hearing like Iyov say like his viewpoint. Yeah, we're not hearing the other side.
And now it's so, and the other side, of course, being that Hashem is here and is perfect.
Yeah.
So according to Ramban, really Rashi says like this too. The Ramban is very strong about this. I'll be talking about the Ramban a lot. The Ramban has so far saying that, look, Iyov, Hashem is so far beyond anything that you and I know. He's so exalted. And our obligation to serve him is so immense, so demanding. You, me, no human being can ever do enough anyway. And here the Ramban says his point is actually a little bit subtle, and I don't think with all the issues we've raised so far, I don't think we've raised this particular issue. So stay with me and hear the insight. This is the Ramban's take on it so far. Look, you claim you're an innocent man. Maybe you are. And maybe if anybody would do a thorough detective research study on your entire life, they planted some kind of device and they have a complete recording of everything you've ever spoken about, and your whole life is captured on video. What a scary concept for most of us, right? What is it?
It's like a movie on that kind of.
Okay, but everything you've done has now been under surveillance, right? But Iyov, come on, says so far according to the Ramban, there are sins you may not be aware of, sins of omission or even commission, which means things that you willingly did, but you may have unwillingly, inadvertently, subconsciously done things. You may not ever be aware of them. And you know what? And here's the chiddush. You may be suffering for a very specific reason, and you may never understand why. You may never make any connection with what you're doing in your life, even though there very well may be a connection. Now, this is a kasha. This is Rabbi Zimmerman, and the Arswell has this take on as this addition to the discussion. He says, if you see suffering purely and only as punitive, we're being punished. We're being punished for for something I did. It's the only reason for suffering. Then this is really a kasha, because follow the logic. I know some of you are multitasking, so maybe you're not staying with me entirely, but hear it again. The only reason we suffer is because we're being punished. But then add to the ingredient, okay, and then sometimes the reasons for our suffering will never be made clear to us. So then what was the point of the suffering? I mean, isn't it all just so I make tshuva? You hear the question?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So
one second. I thought that Yisurin is like a big thing, and it's like a good thing, and it's a necessary thing, and it isn't always for the sake of tshuva.
Well, that's where I'm going. 100%. That's the next step. Right. But there is an attitude who see suffering as purely meant to, I stubbed my toe because I'm walking to the gambling machine, and I shouldn't, to the casino, to the slot machines, and I shouldn't be going there. Halavai would be so easy. Once upon a time, it was more clear cut. Tsaras, Lashon Hara, dumb. I got it. Right? But like you're suggesting now, that's only if you see suffering as a mechanism for tshuva. But there are other reasons for suffering. We've talked about them. We've mentioned a few times Yisur and Shalava. Sometimes the tzaddik suffers just to enhance his olam haba. It's not connected. It doesn't correlate necessarily to any sin. It serves a number of other purposes too. It may be, consider this too, it may be that the suffering is not necessarily a punishment for a sin, and it may not be Yisur and Shalava. It may be that the suffering itself was just there so that we grow. We've mentioned this a little bit, that sometimes our suffering, as miserable as we are in the process, we look around and we see it as a blessing in disguise. It made us more mature. It made us more sane. It deepened us. It stimulates sometimes a search for meaning in life, which itself may have been the purpose all along. In which case, then, so far as suggesting, maybe it's okay if we don't understand why we suffer. And Iyov, why do you continuously, he doesn't say this, but the implication is, Iyov, why do you then harp on the fact that you're an innocent man? So what? Given the complexity and the multifaceted purposes that suffering serve. Pause for any thoughts?
Yeah. Question. So the easy example is the guy is on his way to the casino and he stubs his toe and he says, I know I shouldn't do this. And then he goes back home, right? And that's the perfect example. Well, what if he really doesn't know if he should go to the casino or not, and he stubs his toe, Like, should he look at that as a sign that he shouldn't go to the casino?
Sure. And I'm glad for the question too, because I should also say this is not in Sofar, but this is, I think, you could find this in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam. And it's just a basic point of our philosophy in life as Jews, is that we're always supposed to look, perhaps there's a sign from Hashem, what I'm supposed to do to improve myself. And especially if it's a relatively obvious sign, by all means, act on it. I mean, nobody will ever be faulted for, let's say, you stub your toe and you assume that's because I shouldn't go to the casino and therefore you don't go. Let's say you misinterpreted that one, but it caused you to make tshuva on some level. You will never be faulted for that. I mean, that's always the classic Jewish response. Something, somehow I might have done. Okay, good. But at the same time, we have to have the humility to keep in our mind that maybe I didn't get it right. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't anything to do with the casino. Maybe it was something else. Yeah. The three friends, Eliphaz, I'm moving on now. That's a little bit about Sofar. Eliphaz comes back for round 2. That you could read about in chapter 15. I'm not going into that. He develops a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about their comments, but not very much. Iyov responds. Bildad goes at it. He has his turn. It does kind of have the way I describe it now, have the kind of image of a boxing match. Round 2, got Bildad over in the corner now. And then Iyov responds. Sofar has a second round. Sofar, and actually some of them in their words, increasingly they have a tendency to treat Iyov like an allegory and not like a person. He's a metaphor for something. We should make sure one of the things we're supposed to learn is how not to be a friend from these three friends who were formerly great friends and evidently not so much now, because we should never speak to each other as metaphors. That was a great line my Masada Kedushin said to us under the chuppah at our own wedding. Where he said that there's an idea, quotes a Kabbalistic idea, that when the Chassan sees the Kala, he sees nothing less than the Shechina itself. He says, let's also daven that when this Chassan looks in the eyes of this Kala, that he sees the actual Kala. Right? We shouldn't relate to each other as just the Shechina or as a metaphor, right? Which is what the friends now is they're getting very conceptual in all of this discussion. It's fascinating and material. But the humanity is put to this is shelved for the moment. So the residual effect, if you do go through this as I'm recommending that you do, and you read it all, their words, as correct as they may be, and a lot of them are really wonderful and quotable. I mean, I think I emphasized this, but let's do it again. Eliphaz's immortal words that actually became a whole discussion around my Shabbos table last week. Adam la'amal yulad, right? Man is born for toil. Amelus was the major theme. Rashi in the very beginning of Chukosai, right? So man is born for toil and all of its implications. So the words are very quotable, but in this context, the way they're delivered, they come off like platitudes, like cliches, right? It's good musar for rebbes and maybe parents and other people in it, or counselors or advisors, people in a position of influence. You have to weigh your words and your timing and the appropriateness. Even if you're saying correct things, you may be totally missing the mark. I think I've mentioned this story before. I knew somebody who was depressed, and he approached his Rebbe. Rebbe, I'm depressed. Exactly, right? So the Rebbe said, that's usher. Which technically is true. It's usher to be depressed. But if any of you is in a position of being Rebbe, don't say that. You need to also have the rabbinic course on bedside manner. Right. So that's how they come across. And Iyov responds in kind. Now, Iyov, much of his response sounds familiar in the fact that he lashes out. He's inconsistent with himself. He is increasingly, I mean, if this is imaginable, he's reflecting, especially in the 16, 17 chapters, he reflects on the sense of horror that's encroaching on his life, that in addition to suffering and what he feels is innocence, he's now stalked by some cruel forces, and they're out there. They're almost these demons that he's chasing, but they're also manifesting in his friend's insensitivity. It may be this that the Gemara has this in mind. We quoted this Gemara in Baba Basra that Iyov asks Hashem, could there be a mistake here? Maybe you mistook my name and you inverted the letters. Instead of Iyov, you read. Anybody remember?
Oyev, enemy.
Oyev, not Iyov, Oyev, and maybe he's saying that to the friends too. Am I your enemy suddenly? You know, how are you speaking to me, people? Come on, little humanity. And he says it. He says it. Look at in the 19th chapter, Pasuk. It's a very such poignance. He's screaming in agony, and he says to his friends, and hear the Hebrew, and then I'll translate. Perik Yud Tes Pasuk Chaf Aleph. He says, and you can just you hear the pathos in the voice. Chaneni, chaneni, atem re'ai, ki yada loka nagavi. Pity me, you, my friends, my so-called friends, I'm adding, for the hand of Hashem has afflicted me. I mean, stop with all the intellectual gymnastics. Hold my hand. Crying out loud. You know, sometimes we think of what somebody who suffered in the Shoah, what they must feel about having to defend themselves in the light of deniers and skeptics, and or just apathetic people. I don't know what the studies are. I know I read them, but the numbers elude me. But increasing numbers of people in America, for example, but around the world, are unaware of what took place between the years 1939 and 1945 in Europe. So what might that look like to a survivor? So far, only has 2 rounds with Iyov. The other friends have 3 in total. He says farewell in the 20th chapter. He actually criticizes Eliphaz. So there's actually some mutual. There's a slapping match. He criticizes Eliphaz and Bildad. He says, look, he's not. Unlike these 2, he says, I'm just an individual and I'm just sharing my thoughts. I'm not claiming to espouse a whole ideology here. Rabbi Eisenman makes a suggestion that so far, maybe it's so far alone, in this statement, is offering some kind of simple, unassuming friendship. He may be offering it. It's clearly lost on Iyov. Iyov does not perceive it that way, which is another really valuable. I mean, there's so much. I don't know if you're finding this. I find this endlessly, not just inspiring, but useful. Meaning there's so much interhuman kinds of insights here, including you could be that comforting guy who comes and says, and really, you know, as best you can with the greatest empathy you could muster, try to reach out and help somebody. But if that person doesn't feel it, on some level you failed. So if that's indeed was so far his intention, he didn't succeed. And on some level, he's faulted for that. Right? We're supposed to be there for one another.
Rabbi?
On the same level of, if you can't say something, hold the thought for just a moment. If you can't say criticism that people can accept, don't speak at all. We're responsible to assess the impact of our behavior before we act. Somebody's going to say?
I had the question of, I believe Rabbi just said that the result is the mitzvah. In other words, if you haven't achieved the result that you intended, then you haven't
in a couple cases of it, well, not usually.
I wanted to ask about
results.
Meaning,
in some level, you have to assess, what is my place here? What is the desired goal, and what is my place here? For example, and I mean, really obviously, but maybe it's not obvious. If you're an enemy of the deceased or of the family, or there's some hard feelings or something, or something to that effect, and you pay a shiva call, and your presence, even if you're coming with the best of intentions, your presence could be interpreted as some kind of a slight. Don't go. Is an example of what I'm saying. So yeah, you're supposed to, do some kind of soul searching and have some kind of social sophistication to recognize what the right thing to do, and maybe you're not the man for the job, and recuse yourself and let somebody else better do it for that, better than you. I mean, we're not talking about an exact science, and you can't always know, and with the best of intentions, and you may have assessed the situation in an outstanding way and still blow it. I mean, admittedly, Iyov's not the easiest customer, but I don't know if I would be either in his position. Chapter 22 finds Eliphaz in, wow, is he in rare form. He lashes out now with a fury. We suggested several sessions ago that at this point, Iyov's clear rejection of his ideas, he's now taking personally. Okay, that's a really good lesson. Don't do that.
Iyov is taking personally or Eliphaz?
No, I'm sorry. Again, I'll try to be clear. Eliphaz, the first of the three friends that we met, starts out relatively tame and relatively, he presents his view. By chapter 22nd, by the 22nd chapter, any sense of propriety and kindness has definitely fallen off. He's now just going at it with fury. And what a lot of people understand, a lot of the Mefarshim understand that, he's taking it all very personally now, right? Which is our tendency too. We're human beings, right? So when we lose an argument, somehow we take it as some kind of personal assault.
Why?
Bildad, in the 25th chapter, when he has his last round, he has a different response altogether. He just talks. It's as if Iyov's not in the room. Which you could also interpret perhaps as another reaction if you've been personally slighted. Okay, I'm just going to talk and say my piece. I'm not going to really even acknowledge you as a human being anymore. Whew. I don't know about you. This is registering with me. I mean, a lot of images are coming to mind of other interactions I've had with people in the course of a lifetime. People are not easy, even and maybe even especially the people closest to us. And how we interact and how personally we take things. I mean, in a perfect world, if we were all the pristine tzaddikim, we would know exactly what to do in every instance. Nothing anybody would ever do or say would faze us, would bother us. We'll keep learning Mussar, right?
Yeah.
Okay, chapter 27. Iyov has the last word. So I guess that means he won the argument, right? That's what we always try to in an argument when it becomes very much about the ego. So everybody just wants to get the last thought in. And he's won the war and lost the battle because his friends go away, and one gets the impression that's the end of what was once a beautiful friendship. He expresses in what might be maybe the hardest part of the book to understand. He expresses his thoughts in two grand parables, two mashalim. You'll find one in the 27th, 28th chapter and another in the 29th to the 31st chapters. I'm going to summarize them. You can look into them. If you look into any of this and you find anything good, I may not be mochel you if you don't share it with us here, because I'm doing way too much talking. I'm looking forward to learning from you. We just learned the Gemara in Makos. We're at the bottom of Yudam and Aleph, where Rabbi said, I learned a lot from my Rebbes, more from my Chaverim, but mostly from my Talmidim. So you better make me justify my words that I said in Shiur the other day, right? So anyway, if you find good juicy insights, please share. I'll say this much. The first mashal, the first parable, is a complex meditation on the following themes. Again, chapters 27 and 28. He talks about the concept of tzmimus. What's tzmimus? Who has a nice pithy definition for tzmimus?
Naivete.
Yeah, except it's very much lost in that translation. It's a fair translation if the way you hear naivete as something purely positive. But we usually say, oh, he's so naive. And then that's clearly got a negative taste to it, aftertaste to it. What else? How else would you say? Tmimus Tam, Yaakov Avinu's Ish Tam. So I'll say, Tmimus is a desirable quality we all should be achieving, even though there is a sense of naivete and purity. It's not necessarily because of lack of intelligence. A person could be brilliant and have Tmimus. Tmimus is an uncomplicated trust in Hashem, that Hashem is all perfect, and I go with that. If you recall, I think our second or third session together, we discussed the Gemara in Sanhedrin, where the Satan tries to lay traps in front of Avram on the way to the Akedah, and Avram's response was one of pure, unadulterated Tmimus. He said, yeah, well, Hashem told me to do this, I'm just going to do that. And Satan's he laid it on thick. The Satan's arguments were quite convincing. And Avram went with his Tmimus and said, yeah, well, Hashem told me, so I'm just going to do what Hashem said. And yeah, he was no pushover. So Iyov meditates on Tmimus. He asserts here that a person could really maintain it and simultaneously start questioning in life, which itself is a questionable proposition. You could have Tmimus, but also start to feel that something is not fair, questioning. Iyov wants to have it, wants to dance in both worlds. The second theme in the first parable, he talks about Chanufa, which is a mindless whitewashing of the truth. Flattery is how we usually describe it. And you remember that I think I characterized early on, Iyov is the Holden Caulfield of characters in the Tanakh. He's somebody who feels, at least, that he's totally intellectually honest. I think most of the Mefarshim are not as flattering of Iyov as he is out of himself. He's his own phony, even though he claims not to be. And he meditates on Chokhmah. And he equates real wisdom with fearing Hashem. And you remember that's, of course, the beginning of Iyov's byline, his basic description, is Yirei Elokim. And he says we can't understand Hashem's motives. But then we wonder, why does he seem to cry out earlier? The Ramban says that Iyov protested not because of any real logical or sustainable theology. Iyov, if you try to patch together his words, he's all over the place. But he's just really crying out of sheer pain. And just like a lot of us can be totally incoherent when we're in pain, that's how the Ramban understands Iyov. I'm trying to think of another figure in history who also is on the surface lettered, intelligent, seemingly saying something of sophistication, but in fact, if you take a total assessment of him, nobody really understood what he really meant or said. The person coming to mind is Moses Mendelssohn. Go look him up, and maybe you'll see what I'm talking about. I don't want to digress there. He's considered he's the founder of the Jewish Enlightenment. The second mashal I have less to say about. That takes up the 29th to the 31st chapters. That's Iyov's final speech. And that he says, I refuse to despair, even though it sounds like that's what he's been doing this entire time. And it's his final appeal to the ultimate court for nechama, for some kind of compassion, for clemency. That's how Iyov ties things up. With our remaining minutes, we just have a few left, I want to introduce the final human character we have not met. He is intriguing, and he introduces a wowzer of a concept. You'll find him if you look in the chapter 32. By the way, if anybody's keeping score, we've had such an effective evening. In all first, how many sessions, Eitan Van? 15 sessions we've had, or however many it's been. We got through 10 chapters. Tonight we started in chapter 11. We're already in 32, right? Yeah, we cheated. Okay, so in 32, now Eliphaz has his say. Somebody speaking?
Just thank you for someone. We're in chapter 32 already?
I know. I cheated. Tonight was the summary night.
Yeah, because my brother came in for a bit, for like 5 minutes. I made a little argument, so I got lost track. And we're in the middle of chapter 10. I was reading the Midrashs. I started reading, like, where are we? Where are we?
Yeah. If you blinked tonight, you missed everything.
Yeah, what pasuk are we on?
We're not. I'm just introducing the chapter, and I'm introducing the figure. And I'm not reading everything. I skipped most of it.
Figured.
Okay. Elihu is different. He's clearly not in this inner coterie of friends. You know, he's not from the Iyov, Eliphaz, Bildad, Sophar fraternity. He seems to be, most of Mepharshim understand, he's considerably younger than the others. He appears out of nowhere. We are not given much really a backstory. You get the impression, if you just read it straight, that he's been a bystander. He's been just listening all this time.
Kind of like Ari Swift in the Farmer's
I don't
Field
know
out
how
here.
you would dramatize Iyov. It would not sell a lot of tickets anyway. Iyov, you remember, was apparently a very prominent person. One imagines then that his friends were probably no less, and that maybe this discussion that was took on a kind of a public forum where people gathered around just to hear them go at it. I mean, that was their equivalent of a boxing match, so why not? It was good entertainment. So now Eliphaz, evidently one of these bystanders, if not maybe the only bystander, he's the only one we know about at least. He's aware of everything that's been said. That's clear in his words. He also provides a certain light on the topics that all the other figures have been seeking and not necessarily quite pinpointing. They've been talking around it, and sometimes there's a little overlap, but not quite what Elihu says. In the second pasuk of the 32nd chapter, we find that he comes from Mimishpachat Ram. Okay, well, that's always a tip-off. You hear that little tidbit. So what does that mean? The Ramban and a few others identify Ram as Avram or Avraham. Not that he's actually Abraham, but that he comes from the family of Avram. Everybody understands, even though there's a debate about the religious identity of Iyov and his friends, everybody understands that Elihu is Jewish, and the ideas that he is expressing is decidedly Jewish. He comes from a family, in fact, steeped in faith and emunah. His main objectives, he's not subtle, is that Iyov, he's trying to express to him, Iyov, you claimed that Hashem has distorted justice. He says, Iyov, you're an innocent man. Fair enough. I'm not going to take you on that point. And Hashem is perfectly just. That's what he says to him. It doesn't add up mathematically. Like, how do you, that's the basic equation that we've been dancing around since the beginning of the book. Yeah, that's what it is. Shem is just, you're innocent. Live with it. Yeah, go ahead.
So just a pointer on, I guess, the name, because I'm looking at it. It's Elihu ben Barachel. Does that anyone talk about how Barachel is like Barachel, or it's not?
Yeah, sure, and it's certainly appropriate, right? I mean, you'll hear his ideas that he's expressing are almost identical with the ideas that we'll hear that Hashem himself will come and express at the very end of the book, near the very end of the book. And it's a little, that's where we're going with Hashem's appearance. Hashem's appearance in Iyov is unlike any other. We have to be careful going there because even though he comes through as Chas v'sholom, like a human character, we understand that nothing could be further from the truth. This is Moshe Rabbeinu or Iyov or whoever is presenting us the Sefer. This is giving us something so that we have access to Hashem, but it's not to be taken literally. But Elihu's ideas are the most compatible with Hashem's. And so Baruch Kel, he blesses Hashem, perfect. We're going to talk about this B'ezras Hashem tomorrow night. We'll talk about Elihu in much more depth as we wind down. We're coming. The end is in sight, but we still have some important material to cover. Tomorrow we'll introduce. I almost don't want to say it. Maybe I've mentioned in the past, but there is a knockout idea that nowhere is explicitly mentioned in all of the Tanakh, but the Ramban, I think, quite compellingly finds it all over the words of Elihu. And if you look into this idea, and it explains from a totally new vantage point the purpose of suffering in this world. I'll leave you, and maybe, unless some of you have guessed, don't scream it out. Maybe we've mentioned it before, and the rest of you, I'll leave you in some suspense. Gotta hook them back for tomorrow night's episode somehow, you know. So we'll leave on a little bit of a little suspense, unless anybody has questions or thoughts. Okay. I'll stay afterwards, and have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Hey, Rabbi.
Anybody?
Wait, I think someone's gonna say go before me.
Gabi, let me just scream out. Gabi, you there? Gabrielle? Gabrielle?
You're
You
on.
there? Yeah, great. You've been sort of teasing in the background there, totally not involved. At least you haven't voiced any of your brilliant questions that you usually do. I was kind of looking forward to them. So you don't feel on the pressure spot at all. But I would love to hear from you sometime. If you have anything. No, we always, always in the yeshiva, we're always talking all these. This is your kind of a book and your kind of questions. So I imagined you must have, and maybe you do.
I'll let you know.
Whatever. If you no pressure, no expectation. Just if you ever should have anything, you'll feel comfortable. Somebody else is going to say something.
Oof, Rabbi, you put him on the hot spot so hard.
Yeah, right. Not intended. Not intended.
I have a question. Is it just me, or I get the perspective? I haven't come to every shiur, so I missed the large chunks of the book. But so I feel like Iyov is an insight into the modern day Jew.
Well, we at the very beginning we talked about. I don't know why you're sticking just to modern day. I think he's the eternal, not just Jew. I think he is a relatable figure for all of humanity and all time.
Yeah, but like just reading
the themes
through
that he takes up are these eternal kinds of themes.
Yeah, but as I was reading through it, and I was going through it, like, trying to find where we were after a bit.
Yeah.
And I just can't help but see there's so many more parallels, I feel like, applied to today's society more than they apply to, previous generations.
Can you be specific? What do you think of in particular?
Just his whole, like, selfish, view, and he has, like, that kind of perspective that someone, like, social media people have, the whole, like, me, and gratification, like, oh, it's the world, it's not me, the whole, like, social justice kind of thing that wasn't as prevalent, I feel like, in previous generations. It was there, but
That's
now
a
a lot
point.
of it...
Yeah. I think earlier on in the class, I think we talked about that too. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that's, there's always been a problem with selfishness, but that this generation has certainly taken that to a whole new level.
Yeah, all the selfies, an iPhone, and then the...
Right.
Right,
and if you really have that perspective, it's really all about me, and then you endure whatever everybody endures in life, whatever our tribulations are. I think you get very despondent because you'll never really achieve that satisfaction that people are seeking.
I feel like this Iyov is a much more relatable book than any other ones because you're able to relate to it and see so much parallels between your life and his in this book. You have to see the temptation of the Satan. You're able to reframe it into stuff that you have daily that not
right.
You, like people have daily.
Yeah, I think a lot. In fact, just this afternoon, I got a call from Rabbi Weinstein who said almost exactly the same thing. He said he finds Iyov. And it's the kind of thing you'll come back to at different junctures in your life. If you're fortunate enough to review it. And each time, of course, you'll be a more knowledgeable, deeper person. It'll mean a lot more to you. Right? And anyway, that's what he was reflecting on too.
Yeah, I'm not that knowledgeable.
I'm sure all of that is intended. Right? And the fact that the Anshe Knesset Gedola, the men of the Great Assembly, when they were canonizing which books made it in the Tanakh, they didn't include everything. But Iyov had to make it.
Yeah. No, because like
in fact, in the order, it doesn't appear this way, but in the order, there's some discussion in the Gemara Baba Basra when it talks about all of the different Sfarim. Iyov was going to be one of the first books, and in fact, there's a suggestion that really it should be at the beginning of Ksubim, and maybe even up there with the Chumash itself, and then for all kinds of reasons, or technical reasons, it winds up following Tehillim and Mishlei, and then you get Iyov. It's put into Ksubim, but there is something about Iyov that feels like it should be right front and center. Right there.
Reading other books in Tanakh and looking through all of the stuff, they're relatable in certain aspects, and like you could see it, and even from looking outside in, there's bits and pieces, some of them less than others, that you could take from it. I feel like in Iyov, the whole thing is much more understandable
relatable.
And much more in depth. Like much like for someone who is like a Baal Shiur or someone who doesn't even know what they're talking about, they could just look at it and by reading the sentences, have a look at the midrashim. If they have a good enough understanding of the language, they're able to see themselves in his life story.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. Don't want to say.
Good.
Thank you, Rabbi. I gotta go.
Yeah, good to see you all.
Good to see you too.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay.
I would.
Yeah.
Which one of Iyov's friends was
Thank you, Rabbi.
connected to Yitzchak and Bilam again?
Oh, I think Eliphaz. No, Bilam. Nobody's related to Bilam.
Yeah, I distinctly remember you mentioning that one of them is connected to Yitzchak.
Oh, I did. Elihu. Chazal say it's Yitzchak, and then there's one opinion that he's Bilam, but it's not Bilam as Bilam. It's Bilam speaking directly for Hashem.
And Elihu is the one that said that Iyov must have done some of Verot somewhere that he missed.
He must have done what?
That he must have messed up somewhere and that he missed.
No, that sounds more like so far.
Shoot, I'm losing track of the friends.
Okay. I won't report it on your record. So.
Oh no, because I was thinking that I mean, at least on the aspect of Yitzchak and Bilam, they're both connected to Din.
Oh, nice observation. True.
And I wonder if that could tie in with what.
Well, keep it in mind tomorrow. If you're here tomorrow, when we read through Elihu's content, to see if he has maybe an inordinate amount of justice and not necessarily the same amount of compassion.
Yeah, perhaps.
Maybe. I'm not
like
sure. It's a
fault.
hypothesis. I'm not sure it bears out actually, but we could look at it that way.
I would follow the statement with you all was saying before. Like, I do think it's I do think Iyov is very similar to today's man, because I feel like now there's I feel like this may or may not be true, but there's just a lot more depression in today's world. But I think the average person in today's world is just like overwhelmed, I guess is the word I could say. And like, I think young people in general are the most overwhelmed because
I think so too. I think it's a very good observation. Yeah. And like that sense that Iyov's kind of that Iyov thing that he's doing of just like sort of being incoherent and rambling and resonates too. And people who just don't even know, they don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, like because I think there's just so much more data just in the world. It's like harder to escape. Like you can't escape your phone. You can't escape like difficult things like comparing yourself to others or like wanting to get a certain amount of likes on so and so. Like, okay, maybe in the older world you can maybe like experience that if you go out or go to this gathering or so and so. But in today's world, you can't escape that that constant measuring, because you go on your phone that's how it is. You like, and your phone's with you all the time, and so it's
maybe I'm not understanding what is experience. So you're on your phone, or your phone's always with you, and so you're always being measured, like the number of steps you take, that kind of thing, and how long you've been on the phone, those kinds of things.
No, I think it means like comparing yourself to other people.
How does that happen?
So I mean, one, I think there's just a lot more data in the world, and like a purely technical aspect, there's definitely that. And so I feel like young people like us have, like, we could access anything in 2 seconds by going on Google. All that's just like so accessible. But more importantly, what I was saying is that it's hard to avoid, like, it's hard to make your home a safe spot, because like your phone is like an avenue that you can go into, but like your phone has like a bunch of social media in it, where like you're constantly comparing yourself to other people, constantly measuring yourself to other people, and you can't escape. That's the whole key, is that like in the older world where you only feel that maybe if you go out and if you're in large crowds or whatever, like, but you come home and you have your family or whatever. Now people have their phones. They're consistently like comparing themselves to other people all the time. There's no escape. So I feel like people are just overwhelmed. Like, if I had to put any characteristics,
people project images that are usually not true. You know, they're inflated about it because everybody's trying to promote themselves. So there's a constant feeling of failure. There's an image of, this is the way you're supposed to be, and no way am I ever going to get close to that. But of course, everybody feels that.
Yeah, I mean that is true, but I feel like today, like, if you were to go on social media, you see so many things of like world-class athletes doing crazy things, but you see that all the time. It's not just like you see that here and there. Like, you see very, 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 very skilled things going on all the time. And so like if you keep doing that every single day, it consistently could lower your self-esteem, I think. Like, if you see just like world-class, like, and you're not seeing the practice that goes into it. You're just seeing the best of the best of the best of the best all the time. Right. So I like, I don't know. I think that's a good comparison. I just thought of that when Yo was talking, and I did have another I did have a question. It's a long one though, and I have a class soon with someone else, so I'm gonna save it for tomorrow.
I'll try to give a short answer then, if I can, or we'll put it off till tomorrow.
All right. I was watching a couple of videos on the Neturei Karta yesterday, and I just wanted to know, one, what your opinion on the group was. Obviously, it's probably going to go a certain direction, but I still just wanted to get a holistic opinion. And also, if there's any Jewish credence to some of their claims, like, is it all totally bad? Is it like 95% like bad? I don't know. Like there's definitely a lot. It's definitely a lot more complicated than I'm making it out to see. But just want to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I'll try to get short, but it is a big topic. They moved away from Satmar, even though a lot of their ideas were based on the Satmar Rebbe's teachings that were grounded in Chazal. So there are certain. It's a good example of something where there are some ideas that have credence, that are legitimate, grounded in Chazal, that have been taken to a certain new direction that may not be legitimate. They are condemned by the Gedolim, by the big authorities today. They represent themselves and nobody else. Even the Satmar Rebbe distanced himself from them. You know, and they claimed allegiance. They said, he's our Gadol and he doesn't want to be associated with them. Didn't want to. That was years ago. They're one of the founder, one of the earlier, the prominent Neturei Karta was Amram Bloy, who was acknowledged to be a very l'shem shamayim. Really, he was motivated to try to do things. He was definitely out there, loud. The Gedolim wouldn't necessarily have done what he did, but they respected his efforts, his mysterious nefesh in the name of Hashem. He was outraged at the secular, many things that happened. He took, for example, a very strong stand when they were digging up graves at Tzaddikim, and nobody else really took the same stance, and he was admired for that. But when later people in the Troy Karta took that to a new level of violence, when they would start to ally with the enemies of the Jewish people everywhere and anywhere that they could, so then the mainstream Torah world moved away from them and condemned them. It's a short answer. Unfortunately, it's a small group with a loud voice. So you get the impression that they're much bigger and more influential than in fact they are. Anybody who sort of represents, the extreme stands out and they get a lot of attention. The best thing we could do, we're not successful at this, is just ignore them and hope they go away. But they don't go away. So.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw that there are only like 5,000 Jews maximum in the whole world.
But they speak with a loudspeaker, right? So you can't avoid them. They're in all the Nakba parades, anti-Israel demonstrations. They're the ones in the photo ops with the Ayatollahs.
Yeah.
And they wear the distinctive Haredi garbs. So you think, oh, those Haredim.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like a larger question, which we'll definitely won't have time for today, but I guess I'll just introduce it, is like they think that like us return to Israel, obviously it's only through God, and because we did it ourselves it's wrong or some way. But I guess I'm aiming sort of at that larger idea to see if there's any.
What you might want to look into when you have a chance, look up the 13th chapter of Ksubos, or at least the subject called the Three Oaths. That's really the central basis of their view, which was the Satmar Rebbe's view, that holds, the Gemara says, that Jews are not supposed to take Eretz Yisrael back by force. And that's the beginning of their ideology that says that everything that has been done, therefore, is preventing Mashiach, preventing the final Geula, and causing all of our worst problems right now. And that is
their view.
That is their view. And it's based, in fact, on a Gemara, on a mainstream Gemara. It's simply that's an interpretation of the Gemara that's not the consensus view today.
Why? What is?
The Or Sameach, is Rav Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, has probably one of the most famous. There are a few different views. His is among the more famous. Not Corona. So his view is that since the British, who took over who conquered Palestine from the Ottomans in 1917, and then Lord Balfour declared that the Jews were entitled to a national home in Palestine, since the sovereign power acknowledged a legitimacy to the Jews asserting their sovereignty here in Eretz Yisrael, no longer from that point would it be going and taking Eretz Yisrael by force. De facto.
That's true. That is very true. Interesting. Okay.
The Steipler has a different approach. He says, let's imagine that it was a problem. Let's say they did violate the Three Oaths when they took the land. But that was then, and this is now. Even the Three Oaths says there's no prohibition of living here, of trying to make the best, of keeping mitzvahs, of learning Torah while we're here, and doing our best in a b'diavad, less than ideal circumstance. But let's do what we can with it.
Yeah, but wouldn't they respond to that the longer that you're quote unquote sinning, the worse it gets? So how does that coincide? Like, is that like a legitimate response?
I think what you mean is that the longer that they're cooperating with it, you're actually enabling the great Satan of Zionism, as they would have it. Right. That's what they say, but that's not the mainstream idea of the Gedolim. The Gedolim overwhelmingly have adopted a real politic. Welcome, Yitzchak Chaim. Have adopted a real politic kind of attitude of we don't embrace anything secular, but let's at least try to do what we can to strengthen Torah. While we're here, we're back in Eretz Yisrael. That's Chazdei Hashem, and they don't believe the Three Oaths are still binding or a problem for us being here, and certainly not learning Torah here and keeping mitzvahs here, doing our part to bring in the Geula.
Got it. So you would say the consensus view is which one would you point to if you had to point to one?
I think
that
you
like the
find
three
that you
oaths
could
were
read.
broken in the first place.
If you want to read about it, first of all, if you want to read about it, I can send you my whole. I have all this written up. I can hear it on my. I have Shiurim on it too. The Chazon Ish, the Brisker Rav Shach, and most of the mainstream poskim that we hear about understand that we're supposed to work with our reality to the best of our ability. There is, by the way, I'm oversimplifying. There really is. There are machlok. There are arguments within arguments, even within the so-called the Lithuanian or the Lithuanian Haredi approach. There's a breakdown in terms of how much we should cooperate with the secular regime. There's a small group that's broken away somewhat, referred to as eights, who was very vocal in their opposition to Rav Steinman, Zatzal, and they were let's say they identified with Shmuel Auerbach's ideas that really can't cooperate in the least. But that's a fringe group. The mainstream today, it's not Rav Steinman, it's Rav Chaim Kanievsky, it's Rav Gershon. They hold that we do cooperate to some degree, certainly in the interest of Torah. Rav Steinman's approach was embodied by a pasuk in Mishlei, B'tach Bulos, with strategy we go up in war, meaning we pick our fights. You can't fight everything, and we should strategize and try to prioritize.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
I'm being such a good boy. These are my topics.
I know. That's like why
I'm keeping myself to a 1-2 sentence limit in each of your questions. But there's a lot of meat on these bones.
Yeah. That's like why I started my question by saying I know it's like a huge thing. So.
We can continue anytime.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much, Rabbi.
Okay. Yeah, pleasure.
Bye, Bleiweiss.
Anything? You're just coming to say